Bill 1267, which would amend and reenact one section of the Code of Virginia relating to low emissions and zero emissions vehicle standards. The bill is reported to the Committee on Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources with amendment nature as substitute.
Delegate from Rockingham, Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The delegate from Rockingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the House Bill 1267 wishes to address some issues that have arisen from legislation that was passed in the 2021 session, basically tied us to California's emission standards. And so what, in essence, 1267 does, it delays those enactments, for lack of a better term, by 5 years. It directs the board, that State Air Pollution Control Board, to follow the Administrative Process Act when considering new pieces of things that they'll consider, and also limits those regulations that they consider to the Advanced Clean Cars Act 1 that was originally cited in the 2021 session. Move the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, if anyone watched the Super Bowl last night, I counted 5 ads, you know, these expensive gazillion-dollar ads, 5 ads for electric vehicles, and 1 for charging infrastructure company. This is happening, ladies and gentlemen. The manufacturers have made clear that within years, in GM's case, less than 10 years, all of their cars are going to be electric. Delegate Wilt talked about delay. One man's delay is another man's rollback. This is really rolling back what we did 2 years ago, trying to get Virginia to lead, as it should be, on the issue of electric vehicles. This is the bill that my friend Delegate Bagby led the charge on, and it's a very important bill. Right now, Virginians who want to look for electric vehicles do better crossing state lines into other states. We want to make sure that Virginians can buy here in Virginia from Virginia's auto dealers. We have to lead the way. This isn't going to result in us falling behind as the world passes us by on electric vehicles. I remind the body that the part of our economy that pollutes our air and produces the most carbon dioxide and greenhouse emissions is transportation. This is an important bill. We should not roll it back. I urge that the body reject this bill, reject engrossment, and vote against it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Fauquier, Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would the Chairman of Appropriations yield for a question?
Will the chairman yield?
I yield.
The delegate yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I would simply ask the gentleman this. If this is such an important bill, how much money did Governor Northam put in his budget for the rebates for electric vehicles?
I would answer the gentleman by telling him that the governor put in nothing, but Delegate Reed, with his other $6 billion, he put in $40 million a year, and he'll have to wait and see what happens Sunday if it's included in the budget. But I would advise him not to write his press release just yet.
Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Fauquier.
Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, I would simply say this. The delegate from Fairfax is right. It's coming. So why do we need the legislation? Why do we need to put $40 million a year into rebates if the market itself is traveling in the right direction? The answer is we don't. The other question is also being part of CARB. The auto dealers state that we need this so that they'll sell us cars. Well, now we're competing with 14 other states. All are offering $40 million or whatever their rebates are. So it's all about the rebate. That's what it is. But if the market truly is traveling in that direction where they're making enough money to spend money on a Super Bowl commercial, then we don't need this legislation. Now, finally, I will say this. My biggest consternation with this particular piece of legislation is that it takes my ability to represent my people away from me when it comes to policy that the Commonwealth is going to enact, because it ties us to the legislature of California. And as much as I like Santa Barbara and their weather, their representative doesn't speak for the people that I do. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge the body to support HB 1267. Thank you.
Delegate from Rockingham, Delegate Wilt.
Speaking to the bill,
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all due respect, I hope the gentleman from Fauquier was referencing the legislation from last year. So, yeah, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited, and you've heard me say this several times. I'm excited the direction that Virginia's renewable portfolio across the board. I'm excited about the direction it's going in, and it's moving. It's being driven by the free market processes. And I personally don't feel that we need to artificially prop it up, Mr. Speaker. The practical part of this, and I ask everyone to please just step back and look, the practical application. So we've hitched our wagon to California. Well, California is probably not too far in the future looking at the Advanced Clean Cars 2. And that's a total ban of combustion engines. Okay, and now some people will say, well, hey, this is, that's not going to affect us. You don't have to buy it. Well, if we follow that process here in the state of Virginia, and that's all that's offered, and you want to buy a vehicle by default, that's the only choice you've got. So, Mr. Speaker, I would say that our citizens could possibly be hamstrung by that. I would also note, Mr. Speaker, that there's a measure, the gentleman from Roanoke, for a number of years carried what we labeled the Green New Deal for Virginia, and I don't mean to be despairing against that, but that's kind of what we referenced in the timeline that was promoted there, and it failed year after year. I mean and so it appears to me, Mr. Speaker, that both sides of the aisle saw, man, that's not tenable to the people that we represent. I mean, that timeline's not doable. I would submit, Mr. Speaker, that that's more doable than what this electric car thing is, and low emissions and zero emissions car deal is trying to put forward. Because my main concern is just the infrastructure. Yeah, it is happening, but I don't think, personally, that it's going to happen in the timeline that we're holding it to. I'd much rather see the free market develop it and it come forward, and that we can all participate at the level that we're able to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Henrico, Delegate Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, speaking to the